in my home, there are two cultures. There's the culture that my parents grew up with, by and large, before they ever set foot on this land in Ethiopia, and then the Abisha culture, and then there was the culture that I had been brought up with out here. I had never had the chance to allow their culture and the values that were part of their culture to shape me, to be cemented long enough in my life. And so this world had a chance with me. And things take a turn. In elementary school, you're innocent. Everything's fun and wonderful, and you're cute and handsome, and everything is just fine.
Yes.
Where things take a turn is middle school.
Yes.
It's a whole nother ball game, if you will. The girls have changed and are developing. So have the guys. Hormonally, we're changing. Puberty is what we're entering into. You have a lot more freedom from your parents as a kid. Your school could be further away from home now. At that time, we take buses, not just school buses, but even city buses. And there could be a lot of time that elapses between the time you get on to the time that you go to school.
Okay.
We're not even including what's going on at school.
That's cool. Okay.
And so there, what do you have going on is you're learning a lot. You're being exposed to so many alternative worldviews. You see, back home in Ethiopia or Eritrea, the values that exist in the home are reinforced outside of the home.
Exactly.
Whether it's the programs, the neighborhood, the communities, the teachers, you name it. By and large, with some exception, the values are consistent. They're universal. So culture is cohesive. It's not fragmented. And so they're not only getting it at home, they're getting it outside of home. And therefore, it's very helpful to be able to parent a child in the way that you would want them to go in a context like that, because the culture supports what you wish to instill in your kids. They're not working against your wishes, they're working in harmony with your values. Whereas here, everything is different. If they're not getting it at home, they're not getting it anywhere. If the kid is not being shaped in the way you would like them here, they're not going to get it out there. And that's what happened. And so here I am as a teenager, 12, 13 years old, entering into middle school. And I'm beginning to be exposed to so much. I mean, some of that even happened when you're just playing it out and about before middle school. You're experiencing a lot. Within our culture and within our context, it's very difficult for a child to come out and share with their parents struggles that they may personally be having or things that they may have encountered themselves. So as a young kid, you can stumble across pornography or pornographic magazines or literature or material in a laundromat. There may be other kids who may expose you to things that you may not have found in your own home. Well, now you have new information. It's not easy to go home and say, Dad, Mom, I ran into this.
Yes.
What is this? How do I process this? Can you help me? Someone gave me this. No, you may detect that this is different, this is new, something about me likes this, and at the same time something about me is scared about what I just found. But I'm not too sure I should be bringing this to the attention of my parents, so we internalize it.
Yes.
And we come up with our own way of processing it and making sense out of it. But we may not have the tools to be able to do so. We're too young. And so even in middle school, that's what happens. Kids come to you and there's pressure of marijuana, there's pressure with alcohol, there's pressure with girls, there's pressure with dating. You're exposed to a lot of things that happen on the school campus itself, in the hallways, behind the portables, behind certain walls, between classes, before school, after school. The typical experience of a teenager is to see kids smoking, kids drinking, kids popping pills, kids sharing all sorts of raw, explicit material content in the form of pictures, either videos, beginning at the age of 11 and 12 and 13 years old. There's a lot of sexual activity. In a sense, you're almost becoming not only numbed, but you're becoming conditioned. So your norm level, it's almost like your threshold changes, right? It's almost like the thermostat is broken. So even though it's reading 80, It's 50. How can it be reading 80? It's changed.
Yeah.
It's not reading right. In the same way, your threshold may have changed, but because of the proverbial frog in the kettle, if you will, right? The kettle with oil on the stove, it's turned on, but it's turned on while you're in there. Gradually the heat rises, the frog doesn't realize it. So you're staying in the kettle longer than you should. Whereas if you had been conditioned before, and then you're placed in that kind of a temperature, you won't even bother. You jump out. So in the same way, that was us in growing up in the West. The typical kid who is maybe born in Ethiopia or Eritrea but comes very young in age is like the proverbial frog in the kettle, where gradually, with the school curriculum, with the social environment, with the cultural influences, with all of the different ways music, film, TV shows, and peer pressure weigh in on a child, the temperature is turned up. And so you may not even know it, but by the time you hit middle school and high school, you're cooking, if you will, spiritual, you're cooking. And that was my case. I began to be exposed to this. You even have had cases where you have teenagers having sex in the bathrooms, where other teenagers are at the door keeping a lookout for any teacher or hall monitor coming by, or faculty member, so that kids can have their way with other kids. This is the kind of environment you grow up in. And no kid is gonna dare catch the bus after school, go home, and during dinner say, "Mom, Dad, you won't believe this. Guess what I saw today? Guess what happened today?" And so even if it doesn't come to you yet, it's the milieu, it's the environment, it's the soil in which a kid who may well come from a Christian household has to grow up from Monday to Friday, week in and week out. You see, that's the environment.
Yeah.
This is the pressure. Nothing prepared me for this. And no one seems to be troubled or having a conscience. In every case, it's purely positive. And in some cases, you have older adults who may have some role on the campus actually having a part to do with this. That's what makes it even worse. And we've seen that in our day, where there's teachers actually sleeping with their students, and you have those situations. These weren't exceptional situations. This was the norm. This was the norm. This was the norm. And so before long, that is going to come knocking on your door. And they're going to say, "Aren't you going to have some of this?" And you're going to be looked at and perceived in a way that you're the oddball.
True.
What's gotten in with you? What's wrong with you? Did you hear about this? You haven't had sex yet, and you're 14, right? You haven't kissed a woman yet. You're not dating anybody. You don't want to. You haven't ever tried marijuana. You haven't ever taken a drink, right? And so you're looked at like you're the weird person. It's interesting, isn't it? And that pressure is not a pressure that somebody wants to be under for very long. At some point you want to conform, just to let up. It's like a pipe that has a valve and the pressure is on. You want to give it some release, right? You just want to let up. And sometimes initially you tell yourself, you know what, I may not do everything that they're doing, but just to get them off my case, I'll do the less evil, the less sinful things, just to kind of get them away, right? That's where a kid starts, like myself. And before you know, no one will allow you to stop there. It'll continue. And so my life was marked with dating at early ages, unhealthy dating relationships, alcohol, drugs.
Could you tell something to our young people?
Yeah.
So that they would know the Lord, so they will have power to say no to these temptations, not to be conformed to this worldly kind of a thing, not to be cooked.
Yeah. The one thing that helped me at least have some sanity and stay above water to some degree is the fact that I played sports. I played basketball for 15 years, up till my first year of college. Ended there. And basketball had a way of providing discipline, providing structure, providing support, providing a context that I could do something wholesome and that would keep me away, because you had to work hard. You had to be in the gym for hours. I had to condition myself. I had to be ready for game days. I had to, there's a lot ways in which it demanded out of you that takes time. And that time could have been there, but it wasn't. And that was helpful. But aside from that, just the world that I had to live in and that culture was very hard. It was very difficult. And it was that pulled me in the direction of the world. But then when you're a parent, now fast forward, I'm not only married, I'm a parent of 4 kids, 3 girls and 1 son. When I look at my girls, and I'm thinking when they turn 17, 18, 19, as a father, you have a different perspective on that. Everybody changes in that way.
Yes.
And I believe is something that I would like to encourage young people in is to occupy themselves. An idle life is the devil's playground, they say, right? And the one thing I would suggest for young people to think about is have a purpose, have a why.
Why am I doing this?
Exactly. You need a vision is really about the question why, not so much what yet, but why. Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Where am I headed? What sort of a picture of my future do I have in my mind? Have I even had it painted yet? Right? And what am I doing right now to get myself to that point, to that destination where it's only a picture right now, but I want to see it realized? That's going to fuel my day-to-day life. And I think we need to be, we were created and designed by our God to be productive, ambitious, driven people. God's not a couch potato. God's a worker. God was very ambitious from the beginning. He's been busy working. We just look at Genesis 1 and 2. And when He made us in His image. He made us as workers.
Yes.
He made us as ones who are to be creative. We're supposed to be about subduing, not allowing the things of this world to subdue us.
Sure.
We're supposed to put it under our feet, not it under its feet, us under its feet. And so the roles have been reversed, and we need to take ground back. And I think the only way that can happen is by us taking seriously our lives. We need to realize we've been given one chance to live, and we're not supposed to waste it. We're supposed to live with a purpose in mind. And that begins with finding what my purpose is. And normally, the way I find my why and my purpose is where my pain is. You see, for me, where my pain was an immigrant who had come, who was lost, disillusioned, not knowing how to identify himself, how to place himself, and how to make sense out of anything, and where to go, and why we're even here. And therefore, God saved me out of that. And He didn't just save me out of that so that I can thank Him for it. It's so that I can turn around and help others who have a similar story. I want to see us living with purpose, living with a sense of destiny. And that means you need to be preoccupied. One thing I try to encourage my kids in is give them trades, give them crafts, give them something that they can give themselves over to, where with discipline, with commitment, with dedication and support and encouragement, their passions can be discovered and they can begin to use them in a way that brings betterment to the people around them. And I think those are ways to occupy yourself. In some people's cases, it's going to be music. In other people's cases, it's going to be another form of art. In others, it could be sports. In other people's cases, it could be writing books, or perhaps in production, or in areas of science, you name it. But your passion will take you there, wherever that is. But I think you never want to disregard it. You want to go in the direction that you believe is the direction that your aptitudes, even in seed form, your skill sets and your passions are telling you to go. And you want to see, with the help of the community around you, whether or not there's something going on there. And if there is, you want to develop that.
Pastor Nebi, you are one of the few that grew up in a church, then went in a different direction, then came back by the grace of the Lord.
Amen.
The church are losing a lot of the young people. What do you think the church have to do to help these young people?
Yes. I think everything starts with a vision. We need to have a vision that actually incorporates this. If it's not within the vision, we're starting at a wrong place. So everything was going to flow from our vision. If it hasn't gripped us, then we're not, because there's going to be so much of a cost that's going to go into ensuring that this is a success. And so I think we need to realize that we are missionaries. When God saved us, He was a God on mission. And now that we belong to Him, we're His missionary people. And part of what he wants to accomplish is this faith successfully passing itself on from one generation to the next, like Psalm 78 suggests. And so we want to make sure that we're a people who gauges our success not so much on the fact that we are Christians and we are in God's household, but we are ensuring that future generations are also continuing this same legacy. And so it's all about a legacy. Do we care enough about what happens after we go as much as we do what happens while we're still here? You see, sometimes if we're focused only on what all is happening while we're still here, we're losing sight of what all needs to be going on afterwards. And so that's what I would say. Everything starts there. The next thing is we need to have ministries that cater toward ensuring that our next generation actually be reached with the gospel. And that begins with them coming to a true faith in Christ. And along with that, growing up in their faith in Christ. Now, we do have challenges because there is a language breakdown in many cases, and there's a cultural breakdown in terms of cultural fluency. But we need to explore how can we go about making sure that we could bridge some of those gaps. Let's not see problems only as problems, but for every problem, realize that there's a solution. And so that may mean a number of things that we don't have time to look at here, but in terms of partnerships with other local churches, in terms of pooling resources where it's being done better in other places. However we have to leverage, we need to do so. I think the most important thing is equipping the parents to know what they're getting themselves into by moving here. It wasn't enough for them to get their DV. It's not enough to be able to land a job and have a home and to be able to provide food to come here. We need to help those who are planning on moving anywhere in the diaspora to realize, do you realize what it's going to take for you? Because some people think if I can just succeed at being granted a visa, if I could just succeed at being granted a sponsor that's willing to take responsibility for me wherever I move, if I can just land an apartment, if I could just have enough resources that will help me get my first job and bring my kids, that's enough. No. You need to think, when I go there, am I at the level of spirituality? Or am I at least teachable enough? Am I willing to be stretched enough and open enough to realize things are not going to be the same once I uproot my family and bring them there? When our kids are ready for university, they don't just show up on the first day. There's a team of faculty members that come to their high school and have things to talk to them about, and they have packages to send them home with their parents, where based on what you discover there, you may say, oh, you know what? It turns out I'm not ready for that school based on what I've learned that school is about. This school is so articulated, their vision and what they stand for and what their standard is, that it's become increasingly clear to me that I don't fit that school. I may fit another school. Along with that, in addition to that, they also invite me to their school to tour the campus and to ask any sort of questions I may need and to see if I'm properly oriented. And insofar as I succeed at them coming to me and I going to them, will I then go to the school. In the same way, I think we need to properly orient our community members, our households, our families, to what it looks like to be a Christian in the West, in the diaspora, what it looks like to raise kids in the West, what it looks like for a child to thrive as a Christian in this environment, in this day and age. We need to properly orient them. That's what I would say. And I don't think our budgets, our church's budgets, our church's facilities, and our church's programs speak to we value the teenagers or the youth in our community enough. And some places are doing it better than others, but I think we have a lot of room to grow, and I welcome that growth and I encourage it. And I think in the cases of those like me, now this is a word for those in my generation, I think my generation needs to be challenged a little bit more. I think we need to be challenged in the sense that when we come to the age of our mid-20s and discover the call to the ministry, I challenge my generation to be willing to not go the easy route and go to non-Abisha Anglo contexts where I know the benefits are great, the pay is great, the resources are great, the backup is great, but to be prepared to come back to their communities, wherever those may be, because we need them. We are few and far between to be found. There's not too many of us. And we need to do a good job not only finding our own, we also need to do a good job at retaining and making sure our own last.